I'm going to make some pretty simple, some banana bread with nuts and some raisins. I buy bananas weekly and they go very, very quickly. I like to buy organic bananas so they really don't last very long. So this is some bananas I bought like a day or two ago, and these are some that I bought a few more days prior to that. As you can tell, they're already turning, so what better way to use them up? Use your supplies, make some banana bread. So let's go ahead and start with, actually I want to start with my butter. I have 1 stick of butter, 8 tablespoons, room temperature. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the bowl, and I'm going to cream it with some honey. I'm gonna use honey because since I'm using really, really extra ripe bananas, like very, very soft, they're gonna like give all the sugar that I need, and it'll help balance out the not so sweetness with the sweetness. The honey gives it a nice flavor, a nice balanced flavor compared to white sugar. Again, it depends on how sweet your bananas are and if you prefer the flavor of honey versus granulated sugar, but honey works well. So let's go ahead and get this in here. I'm gonna do it in a bowl. I'm not gonna use my machine, it's such a small batter. I'm not gonna use my KitchenAid either. I'm gonna do it, like this, old school with a whisk and a bowl, because not everyone has blenders, not everyone has mixers. So why not do it like how you guys do it? So my butter is at room temperature, as you can tell, which means it's soft. It's not like straight out the fridge, it's soft, but it still has a little bit of structure to it. It's not melted. By getting it like this, you have to work it a little bit, especially with a whisk. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but you don't want it too soft because it just changes the chemistry in the butter. You don't want to like melt it unless your recipe calls for it. This type of banana bread that I'm making, and there's different ways I make it too, but this, you just room temperature, that's all you need. So it is, it still has some coolness to it, so it's gonna, take a minute to blend. But I wanted to do it this way because, like I said, not everybody has, a hand mixer or a blender, a KitchenAid, So let's just do it like this, old school. So to help soften that up, I'm gonna go ahead and add my honey. I just have some raw sweet clover honey. I always change up my honey based on the season and also different recipes. This one's a very, it's sweet clover honey, so it is very, very sweet. It's very light in color. It's not too, it's not too amber. It has a really nice flavor to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add about a half a cup of this, or maybe even a little bit less, which looks about what's left in here. So I'll go ahead and add it just by eye. I'm going to add, yeah, that's good, probably, because I know my bananas are going to be really, really sweet. So that's about a quarter of a cup. And by adding the honey, it's going to help me cream my butter a little bit easier. Again, I'm using a whisk, so, fight with it. But this is how you guys will be doing it, so I'm going to be doing it like this with you. So let's just go ahead and work this butter and this honey. If you want, you can tap it out and then just kind of like mush it a little bit, just to kind of help maybe, soften it, get it going. It doesn't have to be 100%, fully smooth, but you do want to get it pretty smooth. You'll see here, there's like some really big chunks. You want to definitely break those down. It'll create large air pockets in your bread, in your banana bread, in your batter. So you want to beat that down a little bit, soften it up. Spatula works well. That's why I added the honey, because it helps, soften it up. All right. almost there. Hope everyone is having a good day. Today is Friday. Well, the weekend starts. Hope everyone has a good weekend. All right, so that's about it. Again, you just want to make sure there's no really large lumps. So that looks pretty smooth to me. I think I have one more lump in there I'm gonna work. Yep, right there. See, there's like a lump there. You can tell the difference in color. Squish that down. All right. So, you know, don't be afraid of baking. Just because you don't have, you know, KitchenAid or fancy utensils, fancy tools. Listen, people have been baking since the beginning of time. Just go at it, you know. It might take you a little bit longer, but it's still, you know, don't be afraid to do it. And believe it or not, by doing things by hand, you learn the consistencies, you learn what works a lot easier. Well, not a lot easier because it does take practice, but you do get a better feel for it, and you get really good at it, you know. So just go ahead and try it out. So there we go. Now we have my butter and honey emulsified already, ready to go. So I'm keeping this simple, super homey. I'm going to just do everything in this bowl. So let me go ahead and get all of this off, because you know what? Butter is very expensive, and any little bit that you can use it. You know, it might not be much, might be a quarter of a teaspoon, but that's a quarter of a teaspoon you can get. They even have spatulas that are meant for like your whisk. It's pretty cool. Then they have like this plastic thing where you can like push down and it'll clean your whisk for you. But for today's purposes, we're just gonna do a quick pass, get whatever we can. All right. So I have my butter, I have my honey. Let's get started with the bananas. So I have 2 ripe bananas and 2 overripe bananas. So we're just gonna go ahead and open them. And get them mushed up in this same bowl. You can do a separate bowl if you want. I'm just doing it in the same bowl. Less dishes, and I mean, why not? It's all gonna get baked together anyway, right? What difference does it make? You can smell how sweet these bananas are. When you have dark bananas, I know people don't like to eat them. You don't have to eat them, but save them. You can freeze them, you can peel them and stick them in the freezer. Use them in your smoothies, use them in your pancakes and your waffles, your banana breads, you know, utilize them. Don't throw them away, you know. If they're too sweet or too overripe for your, you know, your taste buds, think of another way you can use them. There's always a way you can use them. See, this one's a little bit firmer, so to definitely give us some structure for our banana bread. And then the overripe is definitely gonna add to all the sweetness, you know, that banana sweet flavor that you think of. Yeah, these are nice and firm. And get these in there. All right. So I am going to use a potato masher. You can use a fork. You could put gloves on and use your hands, which I do sometimes too, because I hate fussing with tools if I don't need to. But I'm just gonna go ahead and mash them up. You want your bananas a little smaller than bite size. So you want mush, but you want a couple of pieces in there. You know, that's what makes your banana bread, you know, really good. You take a bite, you get that little piece of banana in there. So don't make it baby food, but you know, it doesn't take much. And like I said, leave it in there. It's all gonna get mushed up together. Makes no difference. Just get it up, get it going. There we go. See? Easy peasy. Man, you can already smell those bananas. They smell so good. And the honey kind of enhances the smell, the aroma that comes from the bananas. It's really, really good. You know, way more than if you would just use white sugar. All right. That looks great. All right, so that's that. In this bowl, I have 1.5 cups of AP flour, which is all-purpose flour. I'm not using self-rising flour, although some people do that for breads. Because this is a banana bread, you know, it's gonna be very tender. You don't need it. So just use AP flour, all-purpose flour, about 1.5 cups. I have, for my baking soda, I have 1 tablespoon. Go ahead and dump that in. For my salt, I have 1/2 teaspoon. Get that going. Let me get a little. Get that all mixed up. Give it a good stir. You want all your ingredients to be blended. If you wanted to make this a little bit healthier, you can swap out the white flour for whole wheat flour. That works well, good. You know, that works well too. Also with the whole wheat flour, with the honey, tastes, I think even better. But we're gonna go ahead and use really basic ingredients, basic tools, basic setup. And with anything cooking and baking, you make it your own, you know? So that's mixed up. The salt, the baking soda, and the flour. I have my 2 eggs. You're gonna use the whole egg. I like to crack my eggs always in a separate bowl because you never know, you crack an egg and you might have a bad egg. So never put, you know, your cracked eggs directly into your batter. Always do them in the side first. See what you have, make sure they smell good, make sure they look good. Okay, we're gonna lightly beat these and get them going very lightly. You wanna at least make sure, you know, they're busted well. All right, it's good. Put the eggs into your butter, honey, and banana mixture. Get that all mixed up. Now, you know what? I'm gonna swap the rubber spatula to the whisk. Smells so good. Very, very sweet. You want to make sure it's well incorporated, the eggs and the bananas. Takes just a moment. All right. Next, I'm going to add my vanilla. Let me go ahead and wipe my hands real quick. I'm just using, today, I'm not using anything fancy. I'm just using some, you know, regular supermarket brand Mexican vanilla. All right, and I'm gonna do about 1/2 teaspoon, maybe a splash more. So half a teaspoon and a little over. Never hurt nobody. Oh, it smells so good. Get it all blended well. All right, so now that I have all the wet ingredients, now I'm gonna go ahead and incorporate. Actually, before I do that, I wanted to show you. Here, so basically this is everything. I'm not gonna add any more ingredients other than the 3 things you see here. Here, I have a mixture of pecans and walnuts, roughly chopped. I don't like making them too small because then they just kind of disappear. I like being able to get, you know, nice little bites in the bread. So I toasted them lightly, a dry pan, nothing fancy, nothing, no oil, no nothing, because the nuts will release their own oils. You lightly toast them for about 5-7 minutes on medium heat until you start smelling the nuttiness. You know, it changes flavor from that raw nut smell to a nice toasty smell. That's what you're looking for. After they're toasted, put them to the side, let them cool down. They must be cool, room temperature. You cannot add this to the batter warm. It changes the chemistry. So make sure there's a nice and cool. So before I go ahead and I introduce my dry ingredients, my wet ingredients, I want to take a little bit of flour and just sprinkle them on my nuts, because this will help the pecans and the walnuts by lightly coating them in flour, and then you introduce them into your batter. The flour binds to the wet batter and it helps suspend your nuts so that all of them don't immediately drop down to the bottom of your pan. And when you slice your banana bread, all your fillings are in the bottom of the pan. So go ahead and give them a nice little coat. All of this, is gonna go right back into the batter. So don't feel like, oh, you gotta remeasure. All of this is gonna go in. Get it good, nice and good. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, I'm gonna go ahead and add some raisins. Give me one moment, I'm gonna go get some raisins. All right. I had raisins in my pantry, I just remembered. Why not utilize what you have, right? It's gonna go well. Bananas with nuts and some raisins, it'll be really sweet. All right, sorry, I had to open it up. All right, so let's go ahead and incorporate our dry ingredients into our wet. You're not gonna use milk in this recipe. You're just gonna go ahead and do this. The bananas and the eggs and the vanilla and the honey, that adds enough moisture to your batter without needing to add milk, water, Be very gentle when you start mixing it. You don't wanna overwork your flour. It's gonna look a little dry. Don't worry about it. It's perfect. You just want to blend it enough that it is incorporated and there's no large white flour chunks, because that's not gonna taste well. You're gonna get a huge chunk of flour inside your bread and nobody wants that. So let's go ahead and just get all of this off. Give it a little swoosh just to incorporate that flour. Very lightly. All right, that looks about perfect. Give it a nice stir in the bottom. Make sure you see, chunk of flour. Let's get rid of that. So I don't see any more streaks, which is perfect. So you know what? That's why When I tell you, you don't need any special equipment, you don't. Super easy. The more gentle you are with your bread and your cake batters and your pastry batters, the more tender and perfect everything turns out. Believe it or not, you can easily overmix before you even realize it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add about a palmful of raisins. My husband really likes raisins, so why not, right? Utilize what you have in your pantry sometimes. I'm gonna go ahead and separate them just because they're a little stuck. So let's get them separated, evenly dispersed. All right, now I'm gonna incorporate the toasted nuts, flour and all. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put about 3/4 of it, get this incorporated, and then add the rest. So I'm just folding it in lightly. I'm not like going crazy, whisking it up. I just wanna fold it in, be very gentle, you know, give it a cut. Just wanna make sure it's all incorporated. There we go, that looks great. All right. So instead of using a loaf pan, which is what typically, you know, you read a recipe says, oh, use a loaf pan. I'm just gonna use this one. It's going to bake my banana bread in a fraction of the time. It's going to make sure that, you know, it's a nice amount. You know, you can get a nice little slice of bread without, you know, without a full, you just slice it, you know, the center is gonna be cooked. So I like using this sometimes, so I'm gonna use it for this recipe. I think it's gonna work great. I'm gonna use a little bit of pan release. You can definitely coat it with butter and a little bit of flour if you want. You don't have to use pan release. You can keep it old school. A little butter and a little flour. I'll go ahead and start getting this in the pan. I already have my oven preheated at 350. It's been preheating for about 15 minutes, so it's nice and warm. And we're gonna go ahead and start getting this in. You can see the banana chunks. Here, let me get a close-up real quick. You can see banana chunks, you can see the raisins, you can see the nuts. Nice. And because I coated the pecans and walnuts in flour, you can tell already that they're nice and suspended within the batter. They're not sinking to the bottom. They're incorporated very evenly. All right. It's kind of hard when you're having to rotate the pan. And of course, I get the largest bowl that I probably own. One of the largest. There we go. Make sure you get all your ingredients because ingredients is money. So get it all. Perfect. All right, let me put this over there. Should give it a shake, make sure it falls to the bottom. There we go. Now we can take the rest of these and just sprinkle them on top. They'll sink in once the batter starts rising. Shake off a little bit of that flour, just a little bit. that's it, guys. Banana bread with raisins and toasted pecans and walnuts. And instead of white sugar, I substituted it for honey. I'm gonna go ahead and place it in the oven at 350. And because I'm using this shaped pan, it'll probably be cooked in about 30 minutes. I'll check it at 30, maybe even 25, depending on how quick it rises. Just pay attention to your oven. Everyone's oven runs different. Some ovens run hotter, some ovens run colder. So just go ahead at 350, check it, you know, maybe don't open your oven, but look at it, keep an eye on it. If you see that it starts getting brown and it's about 30 minutes, go ahead and insert tester or a wooden toothpick or skewer. Make sure the center's done. Once it's done, you let it cool at room temperature for about a good 15-20 minutes before you unpan. That way you make sure everything releases and it's not stuck. So when it's all done, I'll be sure to post a photo of it cooked and sliced. Bye.